some of the challenges that we've had implementing this, some of the projects we've worked on, and how we've solved some of those challenges as well. So a little bit of preamble just before we start. My name's Simon Reed. I'm a senior UX designer at Enjoy Digital. I work alongside the wider UX team, there's about 4 or 5 of us now, to create visuals, interactive wireframes, reports, insights, that kind of thing for our clients. That could be based on our own knowledge, data analysis, user testing, that kind of thing. The ultimate idea being that this integrated approach, we're drawing on lots of different sources around the business in order to give the best insights that we can.
Hi everyone, I'm Robert Jones. I'm the research manager here at Enjoy Digital. I'm part of the wider UX team that Simon mentioned, so we're very much interested in how we work on UX and UX design and UX research. And I'm also part of the insights team. So within the insights team, we have data analysts who look at all of the data. And I think Luigi from Enjoy Digital is on the call today as well. So hi to Luigi. And then you also have the research team, which is the team that I look after. And we kind of do all of the primary research, all the hands-on stuff. So we do a lot of the user testing, audience research, storage development, that sort of thing. So typically user testing or brainstorming with Simon, how we improve a website, or my head stuck in a report.
So just a quick little bit to talk about who we are and who we work for. We're Enjoy Digital, as you probably already know. We're a digital marketing agency. We've been around for about 10 years in Leeds. We've worked for a wide variety of clients across quite a lot of different sectors: education, finance, healthcare, that kind of thing. And it's just a quick overview of some of our clients. Some of you probably recognise, some of you maybe don't. But it's always good to give them a shout out as they kind of lent me the PowerPoint template for this. So just one thing you've got to do, unfortunately. A little bit of housekeeping at the top as well. If there are any questions, just chuck them in the chat and we'll go through them all at the end. So introduction, why are we here? Human touch versus automated testing. Went over this a little bit earlier on. It's about pairing automated tools, and there's no end of them, and we'll touch on more of them later on, with the human insights, your knowledge, your experience, in order to get the best results for your projects and your clients. So obviously there are a lot of very clear benefits to automated testing, whatever form that may take. It gives you the foundation for your project. It's a bit of a head start. It does quite a lot of the legwork for you. It can free up time. Those two go hand in hand. It gives you the time to come up with better ideas, better processes, better insights, better reports, and also look for improvements in your own process instead of spending time on the repetitive kind of rote work that can be quite prevalent in a lot of testing and research projects. Ultimately, nobody likes doing the same thing over and over again. It's also, from our research, quite clear that these tools have become very popular, especially in recent years. There's 2 here that you've probably both used before. SurveyMonkey in use testing as well. SurveyMonkey has over 25 million users. It's been around for well over 20 years now, so it's hardly new. Usetesting.com as well, that's another quite common name. They've got 35,000 customers at the end of 2019. So they're obviously very popular, but they shouldn't be used as a shortcut. In our opinion, they're really only half of the job. So go through a couple of points here. The limitations are on these tools that human analysis is always still going to be needed to decide the next steps. The tools, no matter what output they give you, whether it's a report, whether it's a data analytics, you still need to perform your own analysis on that in order to decide the next steps, how you're going to make that improvement, that change, that update. And ultimately, it's only really giving you a machine's point of view. It's very black and white. It's very binary, if you'll pardon the pun. It gives you that machine's point of view on whatever it is you're looking at, but doesn't often give you the human point of view. But ultimately, that's who you're designing your product, your website, your app for. And that's really the most important point of view you want to be considering, not the machine's point of view.
There's also a danger that the output of these tools are giving you a checklist to work through, but you don't necessarily have the context or the insight that you need to decide whether you need to do all of the actions that are on the checklist or whether you need to explore something in more detail further. It could be that you're following the wrong approach purely by following the checklist that it gives you. And then tools are brilliant at helping identify problems, but what they don't do, or what they do, is provide you with a solution to the challenge. So, for example, if we take some of the examples like usertesting.com, it helps you identify some key areas where users might be struggling. But because it's unmoderated, and because you haven't had that kind of deep insight from a moderated test, you can't really necessarily identify some of the solutions that you need to put in place. And there's always a little bit more legwork to do anyway once you've used an automated tool.
Cool. So the next section, Robert's going to go through some of the common tools that you might use if you're looking at automated testing, whether it's in research or kind of interviews. Look at some of the pros and cons of them, why you would use them, why you wouldn't use them, and what the limitations are.
So first, it makes sense to start with SurveyMonkey, because SurveyMonkey is a wonderful tool. And this is going to sound really budgety, but SurveyMonkey democratized research. It helped bring market research to the masses. It helped people who normally would never have done research before do market research weekly or monthly. So it's a wonderful tool. I think my sound might be breaking up, so I apologize. I have no idea why this is happening. I might just move it a little bit closer. Can everyone hear me?
I think if you can move it closer, it seems to be a bit better when you are a bit closer. So let's try and stick with that, if that's all right.
Okay. Can you hear me okay for now? Is that any better? Just before I continue.
It sounds better for me. We have had some people comment in the chat, so yeah, we've got better. Yeah, please. Thank you.
Always a technical problem with these things, isn't there? Okay, so yeah, SurveyMonkey, it's a great tool. It's really helped bring market research to the masses.
Robert, we've lost you completely. Yeah, someone suggested try turning your video off, just if it continues. It might be a bit of a bandwidth problem. Oh, I think you've muted yourself. Are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can.
Is that any better?
So far, so good.
Okay, right. We'll continue. So yeah, I basically talked about how SurveyMonkey is quite great, but the problem with SurveyMonkey is it kind of gives you lots of templates, which are fine, but without a researcher actually looking over the questions, there's not really any way of knowing whether you're asking a question in an unbiased way, and it really kind of needs that human touch, which is kind of what we're talking about, to make sure that it's a good survey and make sure that it's a good piece of research that you're doing. The other thing as well with SurveyMonkey is you get all these charts at the end, and that's great. But again, it doesn't really help you analyze and interpret. It gives you a word cloud, but I don't know what use a word cloud has ever been to anyone. So, you know, there's all sorts of kind of little ways that SurveyMonkey is brilliant, but it needs extra human insight. And then also on SurveyMonkey as well, they launched a couple of years ago SurveyMonkey Audience, which is brilliant. It allows you to get survey responses from as little as $1, something like that. But again, it's very inflexible in terms of the quotas that you might want to set. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about recruiting people for studies as well. So I wanted to give you an example of a really innovative market research tool that's entered the marketplace over the last few years. And one of those is Zappy. And Zappy is very, very innovative. It allows you to do market research for a couple of £1,000s rather than tens of thousands of pounds. And it allows you to do those studies particularly quickly. You can do ad testing, so digital ad testing, TV ad testing, brand perception surveys, concept testing, product testing, you name it. It's great. But one of the problems with a tool like this, as fantastic as it is in helping bring market research to people who normally wouldn't pay for it because they don't have the budget, the problem is it's not flexible at all. So, for example, if you look at the website, it tells you all the questions that are included. It tells you what the outputs are, all these charts and things like that. But in terms of the sample that you're sending the survey to, pretty inflexible. You can't really change any of the questions. It doesn't really help if you have kind of niche audiences, that sort of thing. If you were testing for a client who was very, very niche, it wouldn't be massively helpful. And the other thing as well is the output that it gives you, lots of colorful charts, is actually quite overwhelming for someone who is just trying to run market research quite quickly, because then they have to spend a lot of time going through all the information that it gives you in order to actually analyze and interpret what all of this means. And I've been told from other agencies, from other research agencies, where they've had circumstances where clients have asked the agency to use Zappy to get the research done really quickly, but then they've actually paid for hours to go into analyzing and interpreting. And then the final example is our old friends at usertesting.com. And I do love usertesting.com. I used to work for What Users Do, which along with usertesting.com was kind of one of the pioneers of user testing. They put user testing on at the forefront. You know, a couple of years ago, we wouldn't be talking about user testing as widely as we are now. And they've done a really good job at that. So I'm most certainly not going to criticize them for it. And they have ventured now into moderated testing, but typically usertesting.com is an unmoderated remote research tool. And having done all of that for years myself, and now kind of I'm more on the moderated end, I do see massive limitations in what usertesting.com gives you. For example, we've had circumstances in studies that we've run where we wouldn't have been able to get the level of knowledge that we wanted to get. So for example, why did a user behave a way that they did? We can't prompt that information from a remote user test. Yes, you might get results back in a day, but you've still got to watch the video, you've still got to analyze it, you still have to pull out the recommendations. And again, that's where researchers and UXers come in. We have to actually pull this information out and turn it into something insightful. Getting findings is easy, but pulling out insights and pulling out recommendations is a skill in itself. And then finally, I just want to talk a little bit about recruitment. And participant recruitment is really important for any user testing that you do and any piece of user research. I'm not going to name and shame the course, partly because I can't totally remember. It was that bad, it kind of fell out of my head. But a couple of years ago, I was on a user testing course, and the instructor said, any user is better than no user. And that is complete bollocks. Why on earth would you test something with somebody that cannot resonate with your website, your service, your app? And yeah, participant recruitment is so important. How can you make conclusions without actually testing with the most relevant users? And there are lots of DIY platforms out there now that allow you to buy survey responses and sample and participants and all the rest of it. But I'm doing a shameless plug for some companies that I've put on this slide here because they're really good at participant recruitment. And if you ever need participants, simply send a brief their way, and I guarantee they'll help you get better results through better participants. And we're now going to talk through some case studies, just to show that automated research doesn't always really kind of hit the mark. So this is a case study of a project that we've done. It was in the past year. So a leading museum in the Leeds City region area approached us with some very unique challenges. One of those challenges was that as a museum, they were not reaching BAME audiences and other audiences, which they wanted to kind of attract to the museum, and they didn't feel like they were getting representative visitors. The other problem was a digital challenge, and that is, without kind of going into the kind of detail, they're a museum based in Leeds, but they have interest from all over the country and all over the world. They're a particularly unique collection. So there's a lot of interest from across the UK, people who might never come to Leeds and around the world. So what they wanted to do was to build a digital platform or improve their website in order to take the museum online. And to be honest, they had no idea what that could look like or what it should look like. So what we did was we did a kind of three-pronged mixed method approach. So first of all, we did a good old SurveyMonkey survey on their website, and we asked questions to their existing visitors to kind of try and understand what it is that they're looking for, what they think of the websites. The museum had their own segmentation, so we used that segmentation to segment their website visitors. So that was part of it. And then we conducted a survey which was nationally representative with the Leeds City region. So we recruited 500 people through a partner research panel, and there were strict quotas to make sure that the demographics were nationally representative. And then finally, we conducted 4 focus groups with some of those kind of key audiences that they wanted to attract, as well as some of the ones they already attract. And we did 4 different groups. And in those groups, it was kind of a mix between, you know, idea generation session, a bit of a focus group in terms of what their opinions are. And we also did some kind of user testing almost, because we showed them different types of content. We showed them other examples of museums that have done interactive online experiences, and we asked people to evaluate them. And in the end, what we got was a comprehensive set of recommendations based on user needs. So we had clear understanding of what their target audience would be looking for in terms of a digital experience. And then we also had social media strategy recommendations, event promotion recommendations. We had a full report that we gave them, which detailed how they can reach their target audiences that were underrepresented and they weren't reaching them before. And we also give them a bit of a blueprint for what the digital experience could look like. And if we'd done that using automated tools, if we'd done that another way, we would have not got anywhere near the insights that we got. So for example, instead of doing the focus groups, we could have maybe done some user testing, looking at different museum websites, other museum websites, in terms of, you know, kind of the interactivity that they have. And we could have done that unmoderated with usertesting.com or similar. And we'd have got a little bit of insights from that. We wouldn't have been able to kind of really prompt and probe and generate the ideas, that sort of thing. And again, with the survey, we used a partner panel. We had a very unique brief. We had strict quotas that we wrote. People were segmented by their postcode. They were segmented by age, gender, region, all sorts of different things. I tried, just for the purpose of it, to buy that same sample from SurveyMonkey audience, and I couldn't get down to the granular detail that we needed. So if we'd have done this the automated way, we would have really struggled to get the same level of insights. And I think the museum would have probably had more questions than answers, sorry, if we'd have done it that way.
So another project that we've worked on in the last year involved user testing for a leading paint brand. In the unlikely event that you've spent any time at a B&Q in the last few weeks, you've probably seen them. Their challenge, if you want to see it that way, is that their product isn't available to order online. They have no e-commerce functionality because their unique selling point is that all the paints are mixed there for you in the shop. That's what kind of makes them a bit more of a prestige item. But that also means that the website has to do quite a lot of heavy lifting in terms of converting that user into a real life conversion in the store. So we looked at moderated user testing in order to understand people's perception of both the brand and then using the website themselves. So we recorded people using the website, setting them tasks, talking them through things, and then leading them to it, and asking follow-up questions. This could have been approached as just a simple SurveyMonkey survey, and you could have quite easily just set up a few questions, hit it go, sent it off. Probably would have been cheaper, probably would have been a bit quicker. But the downside would have been is that you can't really drill down deep enough with that kind of with those kinds of tools. So if you ask them what their perception of this particular brand is, and they say something quite interesting or quite different, unique, something you haven't really heard before, you haven't really got the opportunity to follow that up, apart from sending them a follow-up survey, an additional survey, doing it there and then in the user testing, recording that, sharing that with the client. You're going to get so much more out of that, and having that skill to know what questions to ask in the testing as well is also part of that human touch as well. Similar to this is accessibility testing, which we worked on with a local higher education group. For any of you who've had the delight of reading the WCAG guidelines, you'll know it's extremely dense and extremely wordy, which it obviously has to be, but to translate that into something that your client can understand, that's another good example of the human touch, be able to translate very dense, wordy technical guidelines into something that so anybody else can get their hands on and understand and know what needs to happen next. That's the skill that you wouldn't get with a tool. It also allows you to make more human decisions, which is ultimately quite important when you come into accessibility. So, for example, color contrast. It may be that the particular contrast on a button doesn't quite meet the guidelines, but if it's using a particular brand color that's used everywhere else on real life signage, t-shirts, that kind of thing, you've kind of got to have that discussion with the client about whether they're willing to change that color and what the I guess the conditions are around that. So which you wouldn't get with a tool, you just get quite simple reports. It doesn't really give you that kind of in-depth understanding context as well around how copy is used, what's above and below something on a web page or an app. You can't really get that with a tool. It's just going to look at things in isolation like a checklist. Multimedia content as well. If you're going for the AAA guidelines, you have to have transcriptions of multimedia content, videos, podcasts, that kind of thing. And tools getting better all the time at this kind of thing for doing it automatically, but you still really want a human to go in there and check that it works and it all lines up. And then at the end of this project, translating this into something that you can hand off to a client who can then hand off to their managers or their development team. You really need to spend some time building, I guess, a more human-friendly report, which you wouldn't get with a tool. You might just get a spreadsheet or a series of checklists. Taking the time to break that down into a series of very clear steps with explanation of why you've done it, what the considerations are, what they need to do. That, again, that's the human element, the human skill that you need to have. So what tools don't provide, what we've learned. So this is a bit of a summary of some of the last few slides. So moderated user testing provides the context, remote unmoderated user testing doesn't, and that same goes for accessibility testing. You don't really get the context unless you're human looking at it. And also, you don't get the flexibility to get exactly what you need and ask those follow-up questions that you can't get that with a static survey with a set of questions.
And what you also don't get is the expert eye. The human touch, as we've mentioned a few times, is really adding that expertise and pulling out some of the key insights to make whatever an automated tool gives you, useful. And then finally, moderation is really important. It's a skill that people develop, and it's not something that an automated tool can do. I'd love to see a robot or some sort of program try and moderate a focus group where you have one person who is trying to be louder than everyone else. So yeah, it's a skill in itself.
So a quick wrap up, just to summarize some of the things that we've gone through previously. I mean, it's probably make it very clear that we don't hate tools. They're very useful. They're a very useful part of our day-to-day job. We use them all the time, whether it's a plugin for Google Chrome or whether it's like a particular testing tool that can give us the head start we need. But they're always one part of a wider process. And building on top of that, it's a launch pad for your own work. It's not the only bit of work that you need to do. It's your input, it's your knowledge, your experience and expertise that ultimately are going to make the difference.
It's also best to mix and match tools to suit your own processes, whatever they may be. As Simon's mentioned, we do find it quite useful to use accessibility tools to identify some problems, and then we can kind of work out the solutions to those problems. And it's the same with SurveyMonkey and buying survey responses. Sometimes they are the best methods and they are the best ways of doing it. It's just kind of mixing and matching the approach to really suit your own needs. And I guess kind of final point for the day is maybe just don't rely on tools to give you everything. There's a reason that we're all in UX and we're all in the jobs that we're in. And that's because we're here and we essentially exist in our careers to give people insights and improve the user experience. And tools alone simply can't do that. So yeah, don't rely on the tools to give you everything.
Cool. So that's our presentation. I think we've covered off quite a lot of things there. Are there any questions at this point? Rob, I don't know if you've got the questions panel open there. We can go through a few of them.
Yeah, we've got one question in the Q&A. I'll encourage people to use the Q&A chat, or the chat itself. We can kind of field questions from both areas, but we've got one from Jamie. What's your opinion on surveys in general? I use them frequently, but I've had mixed reviews from UX researchers. Some don't think there's value in surveys.
I want to drop you in it, Robert, but that's probably one for you.
No, it's fine. The short answer, I guess, is it depends on what your objective is and what you're trying to achieve. So, for example, if I go back to the museum project example, we needed to do a survey to understand what people thought of the website just in general, but we were already going to do some qualitative research with people, and we knew we were going to do that. I don't think surveys on their own in that context would have given us what we needed, but because we knew we were always going to do the qualitative element as well, I think they were really useful. The other interesting point with surveys is it also depends on what you think the number of responses you're going to get is. If you're using a panel and you're buying 500 responses, or you're sending it to a database for a client, or if you work client side, if you've got a big database, then that's fine, because you know you're going to get a decent number of responses that you can actually get some conclusions from. But generally speaking, I think I'd always try and go for a mixed method approach, because the survey can tell you a little bit of the what, and then the focus groups or depth interviews or user testing can tell you the why. Does that answer your question?
Cool. Yeah. Thanks, Robert. We've got we've got another question in from Mark. Do you distinguish between user research and market research?
I think, well, from my point of view, I do both, and I probably would distinguish them as being a little bit different, but I think, and quite rightly, I think they are starting to merge. But market research, in my view, would be more kind of traditional techniques like focus groups, even depth interviews. But now that the UX world is kind of developing its research approach, it's good to see that people are doing user needs interviews. It's good to see people are doing depth interviews. So yeah, I would distinguish, but I'd like to think that we're getting to the point where they're starting to merge. And also market research itself sometimes has different challenges. For example, if I was to talk about user research, I'd be talking about helping to improve user experience and improve a customer journey or a user journey. But if I was talking about market research, I'd probably be talking about we're doing interviews or surveys to inform a strategy or a content marketing strategy or a business decision as a client might want to mitigate risk. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
We've got another one from Neil. What's your favourite user research question?
There you go. Try and answer that one, Rob.
Wow. Can I not have a favourite? Actually, I do have a favourite. I'm going to be honest, I do. Sometimes at the end of user testing sessions, we ask people to describe a website in 3 words, and it's kind of a good way of finishing off. They've seen the whole site, they've been through the whole journey, they've probably, you know, torn their hair out a little bit and had a bit of frustration and got everything off their chest. And then at the end, I just like to finish off with what what 3 words would you use to describe the website? Because that really kind of reveals where their head is at the end of it.
Cool. Any more for any more? No, in that case, I'll move straight on to the
Oh, before you do, Will was writing a long question, so that's just come in hot off the press. Going back to the qual-quant discussion, how do you find client reactions to the 2 types of data? Do numbers carry more weight than a few good quotes, for example?
That is a good question, because I remember being at a conference, I think it was last year, and the person presenting the conference asked the question, you know, can everyone put their hands up, do you prefer quant or qual? And most of the room said they preferred quant. And I think there's this kind of misconception that qual doesn't give you as much as quant does and all the rest of it. But actually, as I said before, I think the best outcome will come from doing both. And in terms of what clients think of it, I think clients expect to be able to, they expect qual to be conducted to give more kind of insight into the quant. I think quant misses qual out sometimes. So for example, if we presented the first stage of a project to clients, and let's say it was the survey that we'd done first, for example, you tend to find they have more questions that they just want answering, and the qual part of it answers those questions. So I don't think they have different weighting. I think clients are starting to expect that you do a survey to find out the what, and then you dive a bit deeper to get the why. Oh, sorry, there's another question there as well. What is your view on remote testing apps using video such as usertesting.com? Video is really important, I think, but as I kind of said before, I think a service like usertesting.com has limitations because, and Simon could kind of back this up here, we sit together through many moderated sessions and we get far more insight from moderated sessions than we do from unmoderated sessions. I mean, I can't criticize them too much because I did used to work for what users do and they did unmoderated research, but I do think sometimes it might be cheaper, it might be a bit quicker, but I do think it lacks the detail. Cool. Any more?
Oh, yeah. Anonymous attendee. So many companies push their digital services heavily during COVID, e.g. you can't call their customer services anymore. Do you feel the world is ready for 100% digital experience? And how do we capture human need in the digital world?
Do you want to take this one, Simon?
Yeah, it's quite a big question, to be honest. I suppose there's no real kind of blanket answer on that one, unfortunately. I think it kind of depends on the sector and the industry that particular client is in. So, for example, the paint client that I mentioned earlier, they're in a bit of an interesting situation where people can't go into stores in order to buy their products. So they're having to put a little bit more emphasis on some of the content creation. So they're kind of drumming up the interest to creating blog posts, videos, social media, press, that kind of thing, in order to get people almost lined up, almost ready to go in once the shops reopen. And unless, I mean, there's no shortage of clients and companies that are going to have that kind of setup where they have to sell something physically, until you reach the point where you can send pretty much anything in the post at a reasonable price. It's probably not really going to change, to be honest. So no, in answer to that question, not right now, but one day, hopefully. Cool. Any more questions?
If people do have questions as we move on, I guess, feel free to add them and we can maybe loop back to them. Just for attendees' benefit, Simon and Robert have got a bit of an interactive quiz now for us, so we can move on to that bit, but do feel free, if any inspiration strikes and there's any questions, we can loop back around before we finish.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if anything comes to mind, we're always on Twitter or LinkedIn as well. You can always drop us a line there. We can pick it up after the presentation. Now, a reward for anybody who's made it this far. So you can do this in your browser or on your phone if it's easier. If you head to this this URL at the top here and enter the game code, and you can join in the quiz and we can all play along live. So I'll leave it open for 30 seconds or so and then we'll get started. And it is questions about stuff in the presentation. It's not like a pub quiz. I'm sure you've all had plenty of them recently.
It's also just a bit of fun. They're not serious kind of questions. It's just a bit of kind of a short. I think it's 6 questions, quite light-hearted. And everybody's probably going to get them in a different order as well, just so nobody can cheat.
Cool, probably give it another 10, 15 seconds or so if anybody else does want to join.
Saying you can use your phone or your laptop. Either's fine.
Yeah, phone's probably easier. You haven't got a tab away from this presentation. Not you want to. So. Okay, cool. Let's get started. See if you can spot yourself on the leaderboard as well and see who's winning.
If anybody is struggling to join, you can still use the game code at the top if you're still wanting to join. It's just at the top of the screen.
Don't know who Anon is, but they're storming ahead. Limitations of a free account, unfortunately. I think we're only able to have 25 people in the quiz. But what I will do is send the link around after this as well, so you can play at your own leisure.
Oh, Jamie's doing well.
Yeah, we've got a new leader. That's it, we've got our first finisher.
Oh, yeah. People doing generally quite well, 80% accuracy.
Yeah, good to see there's not too many wrong answers so far.
I think you've brought out people's competitive streak.
I think we're almost there. I think almost everybody's finished now, which is good.
How many are we waiting for?
I think everybody's there.
Oh, yeah.
Apart from Mira, who I don't think's playing anymore. Right down there at the bottom.
I just clocked Ian's comment to panelists. It's not as good as the chase apparently, so we've got some way to go before we're hitting a prime time slot with this one.
Which one of the guys I would be? Which one of the
Yeah.
Definitely not taking suggestions on that one.
No, we'll skate around that one.
Cool. Should we call it there, Rob?
Yeah, I think so. That looks like everyone who's done. Yeah.
Cool. Send it over there. There you go. First, second, and third. So first is Jamie, second is Josh, and third is Luigi. I'd be disappointed if Luigi hadn't come that high, though. Really. He only works on the team.
I'm sorry, we don't have any prizes.
Yeah, we did originally have planned to have some prizes if we did this in real life, but obviously that hasn't happened. So maybe next time. Cool. I've enjoyed that. I'll put the details up on the screen as well if anybody wants to give us a shout after this with any questions or any follow-ups.
Great. Well, thanks, Simon and Robert, for sharing your insights. Really interesting, and the quiz was really. It was interesting to see all the. I think what makes quizzes competitive is a live leaderboard, and so yeah, great shout with that one. Just before we leave tonight, I've just got some remarks to say. We're looking for speakers for upcoming NUX events. So if you'd like to speak for us, if you're in UX, if you have an idea, just drop us a direct message on Twitter. We're at NUX UK. Do follow us, and like I said, drop us a message if you're interested. And we're looking for feedback on these virtual webinars as well. It's our third one, so we're still learning. So if you have any advice for us, or any software suggestions that we might be able to use to make this journey and experience better, please get in touch with us and let us know how we're doing. Hopefully we can meet in person again soon. Not quite sure when that will be, so for the time being it'll be these virtual events. And I think that's about it from me.
We did just have a quick poll we wanted to check in on, just to see where we're reaching our audience for these events. So I'm just going to quickly launch a poll for those people who are still on the call. That would be great.
There is actually a question as well. I don't know.
Yes, there is. Yeah, good spot. Thanks, Laura. Yeah, okay, let's take the question, and then I can launch the poll after that. So from Anonymous, what methods do you use to report on qual feedback to clients or stakeholders to give it as much gravitas as quant? Tips on presenting the info in a measurable fashion?
That's a good question, because I guess the one thing that we're always trying to do as researchers is we're always trying to make sure that the research we do has the biggest impact it possibly can. There's a few things that we do to try and help with this, and to try and help whoever our end client is to kind of share with stakeholders. So one of the things we do is at the start of a presentation, we always put on some kind of key top level findings, and that's probably a bit unorthodox because typically you'd have the conclusion at the end, but we kind of put some key takeaways at the start so they can literally take that slide, send it around internally. We're trying to use video more as well. Kind of videos of, essentially vox pops, I guess, of people kind of talking about their experience or criticizing websites or whatever that may be. And then in terms of reporting qual, we tend to kind of do it in two ways. We kind of have bullet points on PowerPoints, which highlight some of the key findings and the key insights, and then some quotes, which someone mentioned earlier, whether there's, kind of the importance of quotes. And then sometimes we also do a bit of a longer full report where we write in a little bit more detail. But clients, definitely in our experience, are wanting kind of shorter, sharper reports. They're wanting more visual reports that they can share internally. And yeah, I think as an industry, we're all trying to just help clients share knowledge internally. So yeah, we're all doing the same thing.
Great, thanks for that. As the guys have said, feel free to reach out on Twitter, or we can manage some of the questions through to you guys as well. So lots of comms channels open for additional questions after this, if there are any more questions people have got. I'm just going to quickly launch the poll. Like I say, we are consolidating the meetup events, and one thing we're quite kind of keen to understand is if we're still hitting the same kind of locations and people across the country that we were doing with our regular events. So just a quick question for you all. If you can just take the time to just respond to that, that would be great.
Leeds is doing well.
Yeah. Nice to see that this has been a first NUX event for some people as well.
Hopefully we lived up to the hype.
There's still a few more to vote on that.
I ended up with all the free beer from the last event. It's yeah, it's under the stairs. Just waiting to be
ready to be released from under the stairs for the next
event. We should mention that when we host these events in person, we actually there's free beer, free pizza, coffee, tea. I mean, we can't really do that right now, but
no.
Plus.
Yeah, I think the voting looks to have stalled at 94% of people voting, so that's absolutely fine. So yeah, Leeds looks like it's been very well represented for tonight's audience, so thank you. But no, it looks like we've got a good distribution across the other event locations as well, which is great, and good to see that we've got you know, more than a handful of people that this is the first event. So as we've said, we're looking to run these monthly, so stay tuned for things on Twitter. That's where we would usually promote these events, and if you're on the email distribution list, we will be promoting the events on there as well, and you can sign up to that on our website, which is nuxuk.org.
This session was recorded, is that right, Kimberly?
Yeah, yeah, good shout, Laura, thank you. Yeah, we've recorded the session. It'll probably take a while for us to get that down from the cloud once it's done all its stuff in the background, but we'll share that on Twitter, and we can probably send an email out just letting people know that that's available as well. Good stuff. Okay, thank you very much for attending, Simon and Robert. Thank you so much for speaking. We got there in the end with having you guys speak. Yeah, and we'll be hopefully getting our July, as if it's June, our July event promoted towards the end of this month as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that.
Okay. Good night, everyone. Have a nice evening, a nice dinner. Getting hungry now.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Cheers for watching.
See you.
Thanks, everyone.